Hey guys, happy Monday. Today I got Terry Hill coming in. She's County Commission seat 6. We're just going to talk about some stuff, like we do. District 6 is up in the Hardin Valley, Carnes. I always get them mixed up. Northwest Knox County. Terry Hill came out of the school board as well, so we can talk about a little school board stuff with her, which I'm excited about too. It is the 1st of February, 2021. We're almost in agreement. Almostinagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Hit us up. We're going to keep working. Shout out to everybody that's listening, interacting, and being a part of this. It's our government. Let's figure out how it works and who to talk to and what we can do to positively change it for us. All right, so here we go. All right, everybody. Got Miss Terry Hill with us here today. She is District 6 County Commission. We had a little technical snafu, and we're coming out of that. So she was in School Board District 6 and vacated that to take this commission seat. And we were talking a little bit about how budgeting works in the school system versus the county. And this is one of those things that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And so basically what I was asking is there is a set percentage that the school board gets out of Knox County collected funds. And other than permission on the total budget, the commission doesn't have any procedure or process or anything else other than saying that is a fund more or less within the budget that we are willing to give, and then the school board goes and does its own thing.
That's correct. Actually, most people don't recognize that the school board actually controls the majority of money that comes in.
Right, because it's like 60 some percent is the number.
It is. Yeah. 62, 63%. Yes. Right. So even though they are last to receive the money, they actually have the authority in how the bulk of it is spent.
Right. Because one of the things to me is that, this is a curiosity. I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing when you ran for commission, you got more total votes than when you ran for school board last.
Yes.
I mean, significantly, I'm guessing.
So much of it really has to do with the election cycle.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, because to me, it's one of those, I didn't realize that until we had a special election to fill your vacancy this year. But I remember, I know I've seen ads and flyers and road signs and stuff for school board members running for office, but I just never put thought or effort into it prior to getting to understand this. And like you said, the majority of our county's tax dollars is spent by the school board, and I don't know that I've ever had any functional interest in what the school board is doing, as far as seeing it on TV, seeing candidates talk about it going into the process. And I think that's something that's lacking, and that's our fault as a constituency to not even realize that that's how it's structured, let alone pay attention to who our school board is and what they're doing specifically. And so it's become very, very interesting to me trying to put all this together and understand it a little better. Because like you said, it's the most money. But it seems to be at least the least publicized public office that we probably have here in the county.
Well, that I would concur. That's very true. I like to think maybe it is not given quite the attention that it should be, because overall, again, I'm putting my school board hat back on. I think that Knox County does a remarkable job with their school system, even though our state doesn't necessarily fare well in a lot of educational numbers. Knox County does fare well. And so I'm hoping that there's a level of trust there, perhaps, that good or bad may lead to a little bit of complacency in it all.
Well, because that's my kind of thing is I'm of the thought process is if the tax dollars are being spent well, I'm not going to complain about paying the taxes. And the school board, like we said, being one of the biggest single tax item in the county, I don't understand a good metric to follow it. I had McPherson on. I haven't actually published that interview because it was really just a bunch of bulky math we were talking about. It was just hard to, what I was thinking about doing with it, I was going to break it down and try to put a whole story together, but that's more journalism than I'm capable of, I think. But, trying to understand the math of how much is the right number, because trying to figure out the state's BAP or whatever their formula for how much each county and school gets by number of students and that kind of stuff. And that's really all I want to do is try to understand like where the numbers come from, and it just turned into a really painfully dry episode, and so I haven't figured out what I want to do with it yet. And
Poor Ron.
it's not his fault at all. He was fantastic.
No, it isn't. It's what it is.
But it's what it is, and that's the thing. It's like because like and this gets me in trouble with a lot of conversation and argument. It's I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, if I had 10 grand, which is essentially what the state does 7,500 of it, something like that, I think is what the math was. But if I had around 10 grand a kid, I could take 20 kids and teach them something over a year. So 20 grand pertains to $200,000. I could hire a couple teachers. Like it makes like the logic follows, but at the same time, there's a bunch of stuff that the school board does that I don't see and I don't necessarily pay attention to. And so what I'm wanting to try to figure out is how to lay those numbers out reasonably so that I can understand that tax dollars are being spent well and appreciate it. And then when things happen, like right now, we have Governor Lee's office pushing a teacher raise down, which is going to put more into that budget. And apparently everybody signed a letter that says, make sure you actually give teachers raises with this and not administrators and all that kind of stuff. And so, more money is going into this system, which again, it's not to say that it isn't doing a good job, but I don't know a metric to measure. And that's one of the things I struggle with as a parent as well as a constituent. Because one of the things too, is I think just for the money's sake, I think those out there in county that don't have kids need to pay more attention to the school board just because of how much money they're spending for them. And so it's a struggle for me to figure out what kind of metrics are out there that we can look at and grade our school system, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's interesting to me that you make the comment that so many people maybe don't pay attention. And again, I'm reflecting back to my school board days when I was a candidate and knocking on doors. And sometimes the first thing people would say is, well, I don't have kids in school, so I don't pay attention. Or they might say my kids are in private schools, so I'm not as tuned in perhaps as I should be. But there's no question that education and the quality of education is everyone's future. And it is where your tax dollars are going, whether you have children in the schools or not. So it was very interesting to me to see how sometimes our constituents just kind of checked out to the schools because they felt like it didn't apply to them directly. When
Right.
in fact, there's probably nothing that applies more directly.
Right. I mean, it certainly does. And again, just in the here and now, right now, today, if I didn't have kids, you're probably right. I wouldn't pay as much attention, but I should be paying as much attention because 62 cents out of every dollar that I spend in Knox County that goes into sales tax, which it's not the right math because it's more complicated than that, but 60% of what gets brought back to Knox County from sales tax and property tax gets put into this system. It's a huge system. This year being an extra crazy version of the huge system, having the pandemic and all the mess that's gone around it in the school systems, which I'm fairly happy with it for how we've done it. I chose to have our kids in school, and it's been this week is the only time we've had, like, that's so true, the last week of last semester, and then now we're out for this entire week. But I feel like it's the best we could do with a bad situation. I think there are certain families that they would prefer to keep at home, and they keep them home. If there are certain families that either can't afford to or prefer them in school, which is us, I prefer to have them in school. I feel comfortable with the situation enough, and so I'm fairly pleased with this part of it. So anyway, that's my school board pitch. So moving on off of school board, I was reading your bio, and I've realized that I've made a big stink about school board stuff, and I had Virginia Babb, who is my school board. My school board member for my district. I had her in a couple months ago, and so you and Ron and Virginia are the only school board people I've had so far. So I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. But moving into commission, and how are you liking it so far?
It's been a handful. That's probably the best way to put it. Coming in immediately faced with some of the real challenges given the Board of Health and the COVID
Right.
situation that we're in. It's kind of trial by fire.
For sure. Good. So I'm trying to think. I don't know. I could look this up, I'm sure, but I'll ask you too. Out of the 11, like 5 of you guys are new. Everybody else has had a few years in.
There were four of us.
Four new ones. Okay, because
Yes.
again, Kyle Ward being mine, I know he's new. Um,
Yes.
Courtney and Daisha and yourself.
Correct.
Biggs. Okay, Biggs is on his second. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, like you were saying with the school board stuff, the way the cycles kind of run, it's kind of hard to keep track of some of the different moving pieces, and so yeah, I'm sure that made it extra interesting this year. Just throw a bunch of new people in on top of a completely new situation, and then nobody knows how to react, and here's where we are. So I don't care about I care about the Board of Health conversation, but I'm tired of talking about it, honestly. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't go ahead and get the second vote just to put it to bed, because the second vote, yay or nay, would have either finished the conversation one way or the other, and then we can move on to other things. I'm excited to start looking past the pandemic and what the future is. I think there are questions that make sense and why this Board of Health thing brings up some questions. But outside of the Board of Health specifically, we've got the baseball thing coming up. I was a little curious, and I guess it's past tense now. One of the big things that jumped out on the agenda for me last week that you guys voted on was this drone for the police department, or not the police department, the sheriff's office. I'm really confused on what like, again, this is, I guess it's the same question. Is the sheriff's office kind of the same theoretically, functionally as the school board is? It kind of, their day-to-day operations, everything that they do is on their own, other than budgetary issues. They don't come to commission. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hear what you're asking. The sheriff's department is an annual budgetary line item, just as the schools are, and even the schools in their spending, just like the sheriff's department in their spending, when you get up over, and I apologize, I'm not sure the exact number, $10,000 or $20,000 of spending in a particular item, then it still requires commission approval, even
Right.
though it comes out of the,
As well as the acceptance of grant or gift or whatever.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
that makes
that's
sense. Because again,
so,
and as a result of that agenda item, I've emailed the sheriff's office and requested an interview with them, because this drone thing kind of gives me the willies. Like, I'm just kind of like, I'd like to know more about why our sheriff's department feels like they need a drone, and what they plan on using it for. But the problem with that now is that it only came to my attention because I was reading the last agenda, and now it's past tense. They already bought it. And so now it comes an argument on whether they're allowed to use it for what they bought it for, and it's past that. But I'm still curious. I'd like to know. So
conversation regardless.
it is, and it's an interesting one, especially because Senator Massey, who is my senator, is putting forth a bill in the state right now that is changing the way that law enforcement's allowed to use drones as well. And so the timing of it's interesting to me, just in the way the machine works. And like I said, as much of this is about the people as it is about how things work. And so I'm trying to keep up with it, but there's so many parts and pieces moving. I don't know how long ago the sheriff's office asked for it. I don't know how long ago Massey's office started working on this new bill, but it feels to me like they both knew about what was going on as they were working on it, and the timing just came out well that the Department of Defense was selling one as Massey was putting it in, and so it kind of worked out well. And so it's just curious. I'm just trying to figure out how it all is working. And so past that, again, the baseball stadium's the big one, which I know you guys are meeting on Thursday about, which I'm excited to watch that. Just to see some more concrete, because one of the big issues that we're having talking about it is we don't know what's what. We have ideas, we have theories on what the plan is, but we don't know what the actual plan is. So I guess the long-winded version of a question there is, like, where do you feel like we stand as a commission about the sports? I know the Sports Authority exists, but confirming these Sports Authority members and what we feel like we're moving forward to with the baseball stadium.
Well, I'm only one vote, and I can certainly only speak positively for myself. However, I do get the impression that this is something that is supported. I think it's probably strongly supported by County Commission. Um, I know many of us have had the opportunity to meet one-on-one with some of the major players, so to speak, in this project, and gotten some in-depth preliminary plans, and most of this I do believe will be shared in Thursday, because initially I think their plan was if they couldn't get the support of city council and county commission, then there was no point in trying to push it forward. It's a tremendous, tremendous project. The capital cost is as you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and
Right.
that's not only public money but private money also.
Right. Yeah, and so again, like what I one of the things I'm curious about is, we use this phrase in government a lot of these as models that we've seen in certain things in other places. Is there a specific model that's being referenced for what we're doing, whether it's in Nashville or Chattanooga with their baseball team? Has anybody referenced a model that we're trying to kind of emulate with this process?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and someone that would be a great guest for your program would be Mark Manitoff. Mark is, I'm not exactly sure what his official specialty might be, but he is an attorney that deals in bond issues, raising bonds, making it work, plugging it in to the legalities of
Right.
the federal, state, local systems. I don't know if you've ever talked with him or not, but
I did have a chance to off the record talk to him a little bit about trying to schedule, and he kind of said, let's wait a little bit until some stuff comes out, and I'm supposed to reach back out to him soon. Turns out
but
that we're both
he has
Bearden alum.
worked in other. He has put together other sports authorities and has a wealth of knowledge with prior experience as to what has worked and what's not worked. And so I believe we're going to get the best of what's available out there through his expertise and others, but he's certainly a driving force in the logistics of this endeavor.
Yeah, because he's a Bearden Bulldog like I am, and so he's got to have something good going for him if that's the case.
There you go.
So
there you go.
I'll reach out. I do plan on reaching back out to him shortly. It was mid-February was when we were guessing we were going to try to get back together. So it's
Good.
It's almost there as we speak. So what is it? What is something that you've done or that's happened in commission that you feel like's gotten kind of buried among the Board of Health specifically, and because the Board of Health's taken so much air out of conversations? What do you feel that's either good or bad that's happened inside the commission that maybe didn't get the attention that you think it deserved?
Well, quite honestly, in my 5 months on the commission, between the inordinate amount of energy that the Board of Health has taken, and then more specifically in my own district, District 6, which the biggest sections of it are Hardin Valley and Carnes areas, Ball Camp, Amherst. We are busting at the seams with huge influxes of people, of building, of infrastructure needs that is just it's just become almost crushing in some ways.
Right.
Out in my neck of the woods, so to speak. We're averaging more than a house a day being sold and new residents coming in, and it's very daunting. It's
Right.
very daunting when you have this kind of influx and then recognize the need for the services that need to step up to accommodate those people in our county. And that is probably my single biggest challenge.
Right. Understandable. And that it's something that I think Larson brought up when he was on the show with me, and I don't know if he's talked to you guys about it in work session or anything. But that I thought was interesting is that there doesn't seem to be what he referred to as a vision versus planning. Planning's like the thing over there, fix that, the thing over there, but the vision being the longer term conversation about, how we're going to handle this population influx. Because according to Larson, at least, he said the planning commissioner or the building authority, I can't remember who he told him, said that they were estimating 200,000+ over the next decade added to our small county. And that's a huge number. And like I have a good friend that's been trying to buy, just had a baby, and they've been trying to buy a house for a while, and they can't find a house to save their life because it's either way out of their price range or it needs a mountain of work to be livable with a baby. And like at first I was like, just give it a little time, it'll settle down. And the more I'm looking at it and having these kind of conversations, the more I don't think it's gonna. I think
No,
it's going to keep on going, and it's going to keep going hard. And so the question, I guess, that Larson brought to me, or that we kind of formulated together, was what is our long-term vision as a county for some of these major works needs? Because one of the things to me that scares me the most, and I understand the government generally is reactive, it's reacting to what has happened. But there are some things, and I think planning being one of the bigger ones, that we can kind of be proactive on. And I don't hear that conversation much. Is there anything that you guys have worked on that you know of like that?
yes, we are working on that. One of the things that I did recognize coming in, well, before I came in, is that uh, truly Knox County does not have a strategic vision.
Right.
Um, Now, the Chamber of Commerce has done some work toward that. Um, we have some general ideas of where we think that we'd like to be. One of the things I did bring with me from the school board is the requirement that every 5 years we have a strategic plan, and it needs to be updated every 5 years. And it's very specific as far as direction and planning and working toward achievable goals. And that isn't just about levels in learning, but it's also about the infrastructure need of our schools and this type of thing. And, you know, I would absolutely agree with what Larson said. We have a general idea, but as far as really having a specific plan, one of the issues we are facing is we've not had any property tax increase in 20 years. And even though we are growing in population, because of the adjustment in taxes that occurs, the equalization, it does not promote the additional taxes that many people think that it should. We're
Right, because
coming out.
the basic version of it is you cannot be expected to pay more property tax even if the property value goes up per the assessor. And in a situation like we are right now, where property values are going up because the demand is so high, we're still paying the same tax that I paid for my house 10 years ago, just because my house is not more valuable physically, it's just more valuable because of demand.
And I am not going to get in a discussion about whether taxes should or should not be raised. That's for another day. But I will say that we came out of our current Congressman Burchett's tenure of 8 years, and as we all know, he was very anti tax,
Mm-hmm.
as our current administration is. And that's all well and good. I understand philosophically what that brings, because nobody really wants to go down that road.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, for the last really about 10 years, Knox County has put Band-Aids on so many things that it's kind of like a repair on a house. You can fix it and jury rig it and try to replumb and all, but there comes a point in time where you've just got to bite the bullet and really replace and spend some serious money on the needs of your home, or in this case of our county. And that is quickly where we are spiraling to, that
Right.
we just can no longer continue to
Because
put band on the needs.
I think that's one of the, not to go back deep into the baseball thing, but I think that's one of the knee-jerk responses to the baseball stadium, is that we're talking about a county coffers that is stretched thin, that the real conversation about changing the tax structure probably needs to be had and all this different stuff, but we're going to go drop $100 million on a baseball stadium for a private company. I know it's a very basic way to say it, but but one of the things to that, though, is that because one of the solutions to that issue is that we're going to service that debt through the special tax district around the baseball stadium, but then it doesn't add anything to the whole either. And that's where I get caught up on the baseball part of it. That's my stand. don't need to respond to that if you don't want to. That's just one of my little catch things that I think that people are like, well, no, it's not going to really cost us money because we're going to, all the money it makes, it's going to go to pay itself. It's like, well, then we aren't making more on top of that. And so what's the point other than the Boyd family making a ton of money, which is fine. I don't care. He is welcome to it. But, you know, if it's, again, I agree that I'm probably more libertarian minded. I'm probably more of a, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to get Mr. Jacobs in here. It's on my agenda. I've tried. I'm continuing to try. I emailed his office again today. But like I said earlier, I'm happy with taxes if I see the result of. And so if it's kicking up a couple percent on property tax, but roads are getting fixed, these bridges. I live out here in the where Ebenezer and North Shore floods every year, which is a huge project that's been in the works, and it's on a Band-Aid right now. They've got a weird little temporary thing. And of course, we've had a super dry winter this year, so it's not going to flood. So it's going to be like, oh, we don't need to actually do the repairs. And so I'm in with the idea of possibly raising taxes. It's just, again, same thing with the school board thing. How do I as a citizen get to see it? Because some of it's hard to see just moving through my life. Like, is there a scorecard somewhere that the county, that maybe the county finance officer or something kind of puts out that says, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to do it per se, but is there anything like that exists that I could find?
I don't know about a scorecard, but I will I will comment on the the comments that the stadium's going to pay for itself. So how does that benefit?
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Is that you are correct? Initially, the proceeds will be used toward paying off bond debt. However, it won't be that way forever. And that's the kind of thing that if we work toward more developing a strategic plan, how it would show that, you know, sometimes you need to spend some money up front, but then after so many years, how that money will be redirected, because in fact the
right,
will be satisfied. And I want to just say, back on the strategic plan, this was initially it was started about a year and a half ago, when the county commission had their first retreat that they've had in many, many years.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Beeler mentioned that to me as well. Yeah, I thought that was a cool thing.
And my fellow commissioner, Courtney Durant, and I were in the process of putting together a retreat for this calendar, or this fiscal year, to follow up on what was started about a year and a half ago. And it's been canceled, or it hasn't been canceled, it's been postponed. It was actually supposed to be last month, and we have pushed that out to April. And the plan there is to pick up the general goals that were expressed a year and a half ago, and trying to whittle that down and really become more specific and more intentional, more purposeful as we move forward.
Okay, now that brings up one of the things to me is that, so as a commission, as we build this strategic vision, is this something that we go to the city with and talk to the city about getting on board with our vision, or do they have their own version of the vision and we mold ours around theirs? Because I've been on a kick just for more thought experiment, and the further I get into it, the more I think it's the right thing to do, probably long term. But I don't know if you've heard about it. I've been pitching the metro idea. Again, being proactive. I feel like with 200,000 plus people coming in, at some point metro is going to happen, whether we plan on it happening or not. I feel like at some point there's going to be a significant lack of rural left in county, that I think it's going to kind of naturally want to be pushed into a metro. So I've been tossing the idea of what about doing it a little bit more proactively, because again, I would assume that a county vision is going to need the city's at least participation in, and having that extra level. Because again, going back to baseball, if I understand correctly why they left in the first place, it was because the city and county couldn't settle down on an agreement to build the new stadium 20 years ago. Mm. So back to the original question. I apologize, I get long-winded in my questions. The original question being, if as you guys, as a commission starts developing this vision, how does that interact with the city and their version of a vision?
Well, that's a very fair question, and that is one of the things, in fact, that we're going to be addressing at our retreat, now scheduled for April. We do, in my opinion, need to have more dialogue and more interaction with our city councils. I mean, we do stand right now as two totally separate entities. I don't know if you were living in Knoxville many, many years ago when the attempt to have metro government was
I think
put on the ballot.
I think I was like 10. So
Okay, and it was soundly defeated. Um, and I am not. I don't know where it would stand if we tried to do that now. I know there's a very strong faction that is not wanting to give up the independence that each entity feels.
because it goes, but it goes back again in the parallel of which model are we using? Because I don't know what model they used 25 years ago or whatever, but there are different ways to structure a thing like this, and it could have been very specifically one way that was very non-pleasurable for most, and that's why they didn't want to do it. Because that's one of my things too. Is like I pitched the idea. It's like how many kind of major bodies do we have that are already functioning metro? School board, again, being the biggest player in the county. School board runs metro style. There's one school board. We don't have a separate city and county board. We got a couple other ones that I know of, and I'm just blanking out on them. But we have a little bit that's already happening.
Yeah, but we do that because we had to.
I did not know that.
Yes, yes. There used to be a city and a county school system. They used to be two separate systems. The city made the decision. This is roughly, oh my goodness, probably 30, 35 years ago, that they no longer wanted to be in the school business. They were faced with old schools that the infrastructure had not been dealt with well. They were faced with a population that was quickly changing as we were having more of the shift in the demographic of Knox County in general. And so for a lot of different reasons that you'd have to talk to government at that time about, they made the decision that they would no longer be in the school business. The state law requires that counties must run school systems. So when they went out of business, Knox County had no choice but to take the city school system at that time. And that is why we have a metro system, so to speak, whereas we don't in other entities, is because the city schools just gave it up.
That is a super interesting history fact there, because I didn't know that was the reasoning why. I was hopeful, I guess, that it was an understanding that one body would be more efficient than two, but maybe maybe the city at the time was like, well, we could take this off our budget and not have to deal with it, and we can spend our money on other things. I don't know the answer to that. Like you said, I'll have to go back in time and do some digging, but that's interesting. Because again, that's like I think Kyle was the first person I pitched it to, and he said the easy way to do it was just the city quits. That'd be the easy way to go metro, is the city quits, and then we just go into the county government runs the whole county without a separate city government, except for Farragut. We have to deal with their things separately, but which is another thing that confuses me, but that's not important. But again, my assumption is it would be more efficient, and it would be more conducive to a longer term vision of the growth that is happening, and in a way to keep it more streamlined and simple and clear. Because I'm in the really fun, weird spot where I'm my yard line in the backyard goes into city, I'm county, 2 houses down one way's city, 3 houses the other way, and so there's only one little section. I'm in a little island of county out here. So all my business is done in the city. The city collects all my sales tax, but I live in a county. So it's just I don't know, and maybe it's different for me from where I sit in the county, since I'm so close to the city proper, that it changes my outlook on it. I just feel like it's an inevitability, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, and to be proactive and be prepared to start looking at having the conversation, maybe not having it with earnest like it needs to happen now, but that's just That's my Metro pitch. Like I said, it's been an itch in the back of my head, and I keep throwing it out with everybody I talk to.
Well, it's not a new itch, believe me.
But so the vision thing. So when you were talking about that, you mentioned like a couple of. Is there any key things that you guys had talked about that you are comfortable sharing as part of the vision, or is it something you feel like you need to hammer down a little more before you put it public?
Well, just in general, everybody wants the same thing when you think about it. Everybody wants a world-class school system. Everybody wants good roads that can handle the entire infrastructure that can handle the needs of the population. Everyone wants to have a very well-prepared and well-trained sheriff's department, law enforcement. Everyone wants a good library system and health availability to health and medical care. So it's really not rocket science. It's just a matter of narrowing down the specifics of how we get to all of those things.
Right.
And that's the devil's in the details.
For sure. And again,
that's what a strategic plan makes you do. It makes you get down to the details.
Right. Because trying to put a handle on these different bodies at work, not to go into the full part of the Board of Health, but just like, well, that's a state level mandate. The state put the authority in place. And, again, this is one of those things that bothers me as a constituent, trying to push through all these different levels and figure out who's the right person to talk to about the problem. Simple example is I am county. I currently have septic. My septic is failing. It is state law, I've learned, that if sewage is available, I cannot redo my septic system. I have to hook up to sewage. And that's a state level thing, and I had to find that out through talking to my commissioner, and then I emailed Madison and Massey's office and talked to them about it because I'm trying to understand, like I get the base reasoning on why it's preferred that I be on sewage, but it's just one of those that as the constituent, if I wasn't doing the show, if I hadn't gotten involved in this thing, it would have been a lot harder for me to get through the understanding of who is telling me I have to do this on a legal level. And so again, it's like the Board of Health being the same thing. And then we're talking about this strategic vision and how much of that is, how do we allocate for what the state or the federal government pushes into the system as well as what we are doing on our own. Does that make sense? It's a little bit convoluted. I apologize.
Well,
it's just, again, like to whatever a specific is, if a specific part of the vision is X, okay, we'll go back to the Ebenezer North Shore flooding situation. It's a state highway technically, and then there's a section of it is city, and then there's a little bit of county near it, and so like the city owns the easements, but the county does this, but it's a state highway, so we have to get all these parties together to agree on a project and then fund their portion of it, and who gets to pick who pays how much and that kind of stuff. And that's just what breaks my brain trying to keep track of.
It breaks my brain too.
I
know what you're saying.
Right. And so my point being is that as we're getting into the future, and it's like, here's things, like you said, we all agree that the generals of the things, but let's start pounding the details out. How much of pounding the details out is figuring out who you have to go to versus what you actually want to do?
Seth, it's just human nature. People in general, entities in general, government in general, does not want to give up what they have.
Right.
And so, to your comment earlier that you had said, Commissioner Ward said, well, the easy thing to do would be to just, for the city to just give it up.
Right.
That is so simplistic that it isn't even conceivable.
Right.
The city is not going to give it up.
Right. But
that's the problem. That's the problem overall, not just directed at the city or the county. It is what government has become.
Right. Exactly. Because it'd be a much easier argument if it was clearly the right thing to do. Again, just for the example of the city just absolving itself from existence. if it was clearly and easily and simply explainable that it was the right thing to do, it's still doubtful that they would give it up, because why would you give it up? Because you don't want to. You cease to
Exactly.
exist. It's like there's plenty of business examples of the same thing. It's like, well, we don't need that job anymore, but I'm not going to give my job up because I don't need to be here. I want to work. I want to get paid and stuff like that. So it makes sense. I just don't like that's again, that's the frustrating thing as a constituent trying to, because you don't get to just say right or wrong thing to do anymore. You got to say what's capable of being done. I guess is the best wording I can think of off the top of my head. It's like, is it capable of being done because of the power that's at play? And that's one of the, again, frustrating things to me as a constituent, because it's like, I agree, this is a thing to do, whatever this thing is. And then we got to go through the process. And
I appreciate your frustration. It's very real and it's very legitimate.
yeah, well, now it's the what we do with it is the hard part. What we don't do is threaten people, because that's crappy. That makes me very upset, and I apologize on behalf of my fellow citizens for anybody doing that. That is terrible, and it upsets me that people think that's the appropriate level to go to for anything. My running joke on it is, if your conversation or if your argument ends with "do it or I'll hurt you," then you don't have a good argument. Do better with the argument part of it and leave the end off. So that one drives me nuts, and I apologize to you and the rest of the commission and everybody else that's had to deal with that. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think your sentiment is shared by 99.9% of our really fine Knox County citizens.
Well, I hope so. That would make that makes it a little better. But I get it. I just it's this whole year, first year, and I mean just been a crazy year all over, and it's just, I feel like the Board of Health thing is such an awkward thing to have so much attention. And then what attention it does have is so inaccurate to me. It doesn't feel like the actual conversation is being had about what's the real complaint. I don't mind wearing a mask. I don't like wearing a mask, but I'll wear a mask. It's who's telling me I have to wear a mask that I think is the bigger problem to a lot of people. I just think they fail to articulate that. Or I don't even know if they know that. Maybe they don't. That's where I get lost in it too. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Board of Health. I'm tired of it. I know you don't want to do it either. It's past. So
You're the one that keeps circling
I
back
can't
to
help.
it.
It's because it's the biggest thing, and it's hard not to talk about. You're totally right, and I apologize. But I don't know. What do you see coming up that you that, like? And again, like, this is the hard part. Is like, a lot of the stuff that you guys do in meetings is pretty minutia. It's not really exciting to talk about land use and stuff like that, which is literally probably the most important thing that you guys do is land use and rezoning stuff and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's just not very flashy. And so, but the problem being is, like, I don't know what else to talk about, because the only thing I get from local media stuff are the two big stories of baseball and the Board of Health. And to try to push past that without basically just asking you what you want to talk about, that's the best I can do, because as I said, there's not a lot on there. Again, the only one that really popped out to me on this last agenda was that drone thing, which goes into it's a different body that I really need to talk to about what they're doing with it, because that's not your authority. And so, I don't know, help me out. Give me some better things to talk about.
Well, I like to be positive. I do like to look forward and try to have some very structured ideas and focus. I think we have got a lot good about Knox County, a whole lot good, way more good than bad, even though it has been difficult maybe to accept that these last few months, because we've been so caught up in so many other entities. I think it's real important that as we look to the future, we focus on the resources around us. We have got. I'm very excited about the Greenway projects that are going on. Beaver Creek runs from one end of my district to the other, and the fact that we are seeming to get more focus through legacy parks and really the city and county. That is one thing that they are beginning to hold hands on a little bit more, and that all goes to quality of life for people. Again, as I said earlier, really everybody wants pretty much the same thing. We want a good quality of life, and whatever your definition of that is might not be mine, but there are some very uh, generalities that do fall in that. And again, I go back to a good education system, good medical and health care, well paying jobs. We have got Oak Ridge right next door to us, and we've got the University of Tennessee sitting here right on top of us that uh, produce and make available really world class training uh, and jobs. And these are the type of things that there is so much going on in Knox County that people have no clue about as far as the research and development that is happening. Our technology corridor that we have out here through District 6. I would encourage you to just take a drive through sometime. There will be entities you have no, you cannot even fathom what they are. And it
Right.
turns out the level of technical research going on is it's just unbelievable.
Right. Because not in your
We've got
section of
3D
town.
car out here running around,
Right.
that kind of thing. So, as far as what we need to look toward and what we need to focus on, those are the things that I'm very hopeful that our commission can come together and do, um, to help redirect our community. And the quicker we can get all this Board of Health and COVID behind us, the quicker we can really get down to the business of the people.
Right.
And that is what this new board has just not really been able to do, because the whole body, so to speak, is so focused on the immediate
Right.
issue.
And right, there's no amount of eye cover that you can get where you're not going to have to see it and deal with it at this point. And again, I as someone that's trying to get into understanding what's going on around here, it's so overwhelming, that portion of it, that it's hard to get into some of the other stuff. Which through that, I did remember one of the other things that I've discovered as a thing, and it kind of goes along with Board of Health, in that how many, I'm not that you need to know the exact number, but how many different boards and committees do we have in county that you know of?
Too many.
That's kind of where I'm at too, because I know we have a committee on committees.
And I sat on that.
Because I was trying to read through that, I was trying to figure it out, because I was talking to somebody about it, and they referenced the city on theirs. They have a list where they put openings up and all their different committees and stuff like that. And I'm trying to figure out just a general idea of how many committees we have and what they're doing and what authorities they have, because again, not comparing it to the Board of Health situation, but it is a thing that what the Board of Health is capable of only became apparent through what's happening. And so what other boards out there that exist that have some authorities that we're not thinking about because they're quietly doing what they're asked to do, and then all of a sudden some specific situation pops in and it's like, whoa, I didn't know they could do that. And so I've been trying to dig into those.
I can't address specifically regulatory authority. Certainly the committees are out there. I will tell you, though, that one of my first aha moments was sitting on this committee to review committees and finding out that dozens, I hesitate to say a number, it was, I'm thinking it was around 40, but don't put that in print, that the overwhelming majority, in fact, probably about 80% or more of them, were all by statute,
right,
or by charter.
Right.
And so as we went through these committees and saw everything that was going on and all these different groups of people that have their little, entity piece of the pie that they work through, and even considering, okay, is this something that we really need to have? Almost immediately being stopped because it was TCA or charter required.
Right. So so charter stuff would have to be a ballot item for us.
It would.
And then statute comes through state level. Is that
Correct.
the correct understanding? So of all these different boards and stuff that the committee on committees gets together and says, well, this one's pointless, it's a waste of time and energy and stuff like that, we should go ahead and retire it. We can't.
That's
It's
correct.
a state, because that's one of the things that bothers me. I don't, not the
Crazy,
specific,
but it's correct.
right, but like this, the charter one's okay, I guess. I'm okay with the premise of the charter one in the sense that that's something that we as a constituency had input on. It's the state ones that I don't like as much. I don't like I one of the impetus for this podcast was as a group of buddy of mine. We used to go just hang out, have a couple of beers. Like when we go out, we'd go on hunting trips and we just talk and we talk about all sorts of stuff. And almost every time we're arguing about stuff, it always ends up in politics, and we always slowly work our way up to federal level stuff. But then in the middle of it, we stop ourselves and be like, but local's more important. What's going on locally, our commission for us, or our city council and stuff like that, that's the one that's important, has more effect on how our tax dollars are spent and our day-to-day lives and stuff like that. But we don't see it. We don't get to see what's going on it. We're not interacting with it. It's not as easy to be involved in as the federal stuff. It's so easy. We could sit and yell about Biden and Trump all day because you can't live through a day without hearing something about that, where there's not the same attention paid to the local stuff, where in our argument, it is the more important stuff. And so, the more I see of the stuff that is coming from the federal government and the state government down upon our local governments having to act around it, the more frustrating that is as a constituent to me, because I would rather deal with you and Kyle Ward and Larson and everybody else about stuff that's going on in my life, because you're reachable, where I can't go call up Biden and be like, hey, can you do an interview? I want to talk to you about a thing. That's not going to happen. Not as a constituent and not as a content producer. I'm not that big yet. But as a constituent, like, I can reach out to you guys, and I feel like you guys should have more control over that stuff and have less stuff being pushed upon you by the state than it is. And that I'm on board with you on that. And so the question is, can we do anything other than you raise the issue and then make it a public thing where we go and start bothering Massey and Manis and Zachary and those guys to do something about it?
Well, certainly any citizen can and should, I hope, contact their state representatives with these types of issues, and work. I mean, we have to work through change through our representatives. That's the only avenue really
Right.
that opened us. When each representative is allowed to bring, what is it, 15 new bills a year,
Right.
and that's times 99.
Right.
And most of them bring at least that much. And then we have our Senate side that has no limit on the number of bills they can bring at the state level. It truly, through the years, and again, I mean, this is all state, it's not local, but has just become a quagmire of law after law after law requiring one thing after another after another. And it gets back to something I said earlier. Once you have that authority, nobody wants to let go of it. So, I mean, we truly have dug ourselves into a pretty big hole as far as government goes.
Well,
I would very much support government close to home.
Okay.
I mean, it needs to be local, and we're at real risk of losing so much of that.
I agree. And I would like to see from your committee on committees, if you could, if a production, just a list of the committee and how they exist, whether it's a statute or whether it's from the charter or whether it's something the commission actually control, just a basic list and then we can dig in deeper to, the library board. Okay, having a board in the library makes sense. How we figure out how much fines need to be, or what books are and aren't going to be in our library system, or how the funding is going to go to library A versus library B. That's fine. Those things can exist. That makes sense to me. But just a basic list would be a great start.
Contact our Knox County Commission office. They will have that information and can email it to you.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
All right, I had to make a note because I will forget, even though I'll listen to this again later and remind myself and then not take a note then and then forget again, because that's how my brain works. Because it's one of those, like, I've kind of thrown out a catchphrase that I've started working, playing with or whatever. It's like, what do we do to get state and federal government out of our business? That's kind of become one of my personal kind of catchphrases in it, because I do think we get lost so much in it gets to that unreachable point as a constituent where you feel like you actually are heard from people. Like, it used to be, and it still is on some degree. Like I'll email, I can't remember whose office I emailed. Might have been the governor's office a couple years ago, but it's just a form letter back, and it's like I don't know what to do past this. Like that doesn't feel like it got read. It might have got read, and maybe a staffer read it, and they have 7 versions of the form letter they send back or something like that. But I like the concern being that the office thinks that it's enough just to give me a basic reply and not any substance. And that's what, and again, I can't blame him for it. He's got, I don't know, how many live in the state of Tennessee now? 7 million, 10, how many do we have total? Something like that.
7 million,
that many, a handful of percent of that is actively emailing his office constantly for him and his office to be able to handle all those emails and get them back out. It's understandable that it's overwhelming, which is why the authority doesn't need to lie there. It needs to lie back here closer.
Now, Seth, let me just challenge you something on local control, because I think I heard you say, and I know I said, that we wish we had more local control. It's kind of like most of us want government out of our business. We would rather be able to do what we feel like is best in our area, in our community, govern ourselves, so to speak, at the local level. Whether you're for or against, and I'll just close on this because I know we're running out of time here. That is exactly what was given to us via state with our Board of Health. We were given the authority at the local level to make decisions for our community. And I'm not speaking for or against what, everything that's going on, but I just really challenge people when they talk about wanting local control and local government and being able have the ability to make decisions, at the local level to think about that,
right?
Because we have that.
Because I think what people miss, I think where people,
like
right? But I think what people really screw up is they don't like the action, not the existence. They don't. They and I think that's. I think you're right.
You can't have one without the other.
Right.
You can't have existence and then assume that they're never going to take an action.
Right.
Locally, you don't like.
Right. But what I'm saying is I think
bring that up to say sometimes we, all of us, you, me, all of us, tend to talk out of both sides of our mouth.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think you're right. I think because like my kind of running theory on it, on a political game sort of it is I think Mayor Jacobs screwed up. If he would have voted with the Board of Health and then came out afterwards and said, I don't think the Board of Health should be the ones doing this, it would have made the point clear where when he voted against them and then says we shouldn't be doing this, everybody takes that as he doesn't like what they're doing, not who's doing it. And so it's one of those, we have to be careful whether it's the action that we're opposed to or the person's making the action and why they should exist and stuff like that. And I think that's one that's lost on a lot of things, Board of Health being a very specific large one, but a number of different entities like that is that we have options for it, and we like it when it's doing what we want. We don't like it when it's not doing what we want. But that is not a conversation about it. That's a conversation about its actions. Those are two separate things, and I think a lot of people tend to shove those together into being one thing. And like you said, I think there's way too many people that are wholly on board on a thing when they agree with the actions, and then when their new action comes up and they don't agree with it, they hate the whole thing. And it's like you got to be consistent on whether it's the thing or the action. You can't put them together. They're not the same thing. So that is a problem. That's all I got. Do you want to do any, if anybody from your district or around the county would like to get a hold of you, I can put those in the show notes, or you can announce them here, or I can do both.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'm probably email is the best way to contact me. Terry with a Y .hill at knoxcounty.org. I used to pride myself on answering every email.
She answered my email, everybody.
Well, thank you. I can no longer say that I do that because we literally sometimes get hundreds a day around this Board of Health. But if you email me about something besides the Board of Health, I will do my very best to try to take care of what it is you might have questions about, or get you to somebody who can help you.
Because I think Larson put the best. I've learned, if I learned anything by interviewing Larson, he is a phrase person. Like, he's got great phrases for things, and he said, I think he said it best, is that a good commissioner is more of a switchboard operator than a master of anything. They don't know the answer, but they know where the answer lies, and they can help you find it.
That's very,
And
very
I
well
think
said.
that's a pretty well said. Like I said, if nothing else, he is a phrase king. So Terry Hill, everybody, we really appreciate you coming on. I've got a little bit of outro music, and we'll call it a day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. That was a really good conversation. I apologize for the technical part there at the front end. We'll fix that up and do the best we can. We are Almost in Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can follow us, send us a like, share it with your friends, all that kind of fun stuff as we continue on trying to get better understanding of what's going on in our local community. I think Terry, I didn't know much about Terry prior to this. She's not my commissioner, but I think she hit it on the head. I think there's too many things. There's too many things that exist and are too hard to get rid of that don't need to be there anymore. So I'm going to dig into this committee on committees conversation on how many county committees we have that do different things, and whether or not they are required by the state or required by the charter, or if there's something we can actually do to adjust their existence. Again, Almost in Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Have a wonderful day. I'm stuck at home with the kids all week.